Okay, everyone, thanks for coming. This is exciting to see all these friendly faces in the room. I encourage you to eat up. There's a lot of food. And also please make sure that you have the materials that we have to offer you. I think some of you got full packets and some of you came in after we prepared all of those. So please make sure to grab them. If I might direct your attention in particular to this handout that was in the packet, which is our schedule for other events in this series. And I hope that you will try to make at least one other of the events and encourage other people that you know that share your interests to do so as well. Also, this last event is a campus-wide lecture. It's open to faculty, staff, and students. And it's in S111, so there's plenty of room for our students to be present. So if you want to sweeten the pot and offer them extra credit, or however you might want to finagle that, I encourage you to do so. Okay, so I'm Amy Traver. I know many or most of you. And I'm looking forward to getting to know a lot of you through this series. It seems like at the very least we all share a commitment to our students, share a commitment to our students with disabilities, and some of you actually are doing research in this area. So I encourage you to make connections with the people sitting next to you, and those of you who have a research interest in this area, which I do as well. Please let me know, and we'll start to pool together some of our resources and maybe, combine our interests and work on this project together. Okay, so the name of the series is Engaging Faculty and Tutors in the Success of Community College Students with Disabilities, a series of workshops and campus presentations. We're talking about 3 workshops, and the final event of this series, the campus presentation that I mentioned to you, is open to students, staff, and faculty. Today we are going to have the first workshop, and we're going to talk about community college students with disabilities on a national level, and then we'll talk a little bit with Ben's help about community college students with disabilities here. Mavis is going to instruct us about the legislative and legal context in which we do our work when she tells us about the ADA in the community college context. And then we'll have friends from JCCA, Mitch Nagler and Evan Oppenheimer, talking to us specifically about community college or college students with Asperger's and autism. So we haven't had to look very far over the last couple of weeks to see how far we have come and how far we have left to go in educating primary and secondary school children with disabilities. The city's yellow bus strike, right, that's still ongoing, reminds us that the accommodations that we make for students with disabilities are not really accommodations, but necessities. This little caption to the picture says that Carmen Padilla of Williamsburg is unable to transport her son Brandon Concepcion, who suffers from CP, to school as a result of the strike. Many have demonstrated how this strike is having the most severe impact on young people with disabilities. Also, the Department of Education in late January clarified Section 504 of the Rehabilitation Act of 1973 to remind us that these accommodations, or what we might want to say necessities, actually extend to activities like sports that go on beyond the school day or outside of the school building. But what happens to these students when they leave the K through 12 context, where many of their services are actually provided and administered? To what extent and how do Americans with disabilities seek higher education, and what role do we as community college educators and staff play in providing access to higher education for Americans with disabilities? These are some of the questions that we're going to take up today. Some of the questions we'll take up over the course of the series together. So here's the good news. More students with disabilities heading to college these days. According to the U.S. Department of Education, the percentage of college-bound young adults with disabilities has more than doubled nationwide in the last 2 decades. This increase is only expected to continue and to actually continue at a faster rate in the decades to come. Some scholars actually describe this increase as the most significant movement towards equal opportunity in education since the civil rights and women's rights movements of the last century. The most recent data available indicates that approximately 11% of first-time full-time American undergraduates, or over 2 million students, have a disability. It's important to note, however, that these undergraduates with disabilities are not a monolithic group, and that the college-going rate of undergraduates with disabilities varies greatly by type of disability. Most relevant to our efforts here at Queensborough is the fact that of all undergraduates, students with disabilities are significantly more likely to enroll in a community college. Approximately 45% of undergraduates with a disability are enrolled at public 2-year institutions, making up 12% of the community college student population. And these are only students that self-identify, that we have numbers on. These students tend to reflect at least one of the following 5 disability categories: learning disabilities, emotional or psychiatric conditions, orthopedic or mobility impairments, attention deficit hyperactivity disorder, and health impairments. Now, these students choose community colleges for the same reasons all students choose community colleges, right? We are open access, we're close to their home, we offer developmental and remedial courses, we're affordable, we offer social continuity to these students. They might know many of the friends that they travel to community college with already. We offer flexible enrollment options, and as all of you know, we provide individual attention that so many of our students benefit from. And hearteningly, with this increase in enrollment, community college students with disabilities are also increasingly successful in college. According to NCES data, the college completion rate for community college students with disabilities has also increased from 11% in 2003 to 16% in 2007. That being said, as you can tell by those figures, national data indicate that undergraduates with disabilities are less likely to persevere and complete a degree or certificate than are their peers without disabilities. And likewise, on average, those undergraduates with disabilities who do actually finish college take twice as long to do so than their non-disabled peers. So we've organized this series because the research indicates that faculty and staff awareness of these issues and this context is positively correlated with the success of undergraduates with disabilities. And I'll draw your attention to a couple of things. One is that on the 17th of April, that workshop will actually be held in L117, not in Oakland, which was the original location. And that's because we'll be offering, in conjunction with the Office of Service Learning, a webinar. So we need to be in a tech-friendly room. So please do note that if you had taken note of the original schedule. Also, please note that we've created a website. Down at the bottom of the page, there's the URL for you. We are going to post all of the videos from this series to that website. We have a wonderful student aid from Ben's office that's helping us, and we are posting additional resources too. So if there's anything here you want additional information about, we're going to post all sorts of academic articles and relevant websites to that site. I also encourage you, if you have any resources that you might think are relevant to the series, to let me know, and we'll post these up for you as well. So here's the data about CUNY that might be of most interest to you. I can think of no better community college campus on which to hold this series, and the reasons are here in plain sight. At CUNY, students with disabilities are most likely to enroll in our community colleges, and Queensborough enrolls more students with disabilities than any other CUNY community college. So you see the highlighted numbers down below. And you'll also note the growth over time in the number of students enrolled at Queensborough with disabilities. So before I transition to Mavis Hall from Affirmative Action and Diversity to talk to us a little bit about the ADA and the legal context in which we do our work, I just want to acknowledge a couple of parties who have made this series possible. The first is CUNY's Office of Recruitment and Diversity, who through a Diversity Projects Development Fund grant is supporting our efforts here today and throughout the semester. Also, all of these wonderful offices that you're all very familiar with here at Queensborough, particularly the Office of Academic Affairs, who provided lunch for us and will for the next 2 workshops, and also to SSD, because Ben and Carlos have been partners in this effort, and their students have been really, truly wonderful as well. So I'll turn it over to Mavis and look forward to any questions. The way we've structured this is that we'll have a couple of presentations, then we'll have room for questions and comments, discussion, and then we will have the folks from JCCA to talk to us about autism and Asperger's. Yeah. Excuse me. And Mavis, you're supposed to wear that. Like, you're supposed to wear that.
Good afternoon, everyone. How many of you actually have a disability statement on your syllabus? Oh, great. Okay. And I believe you have shared that with everyone, Dr. Traver?
Ben did in the beginning of the semester.
Okay. So it's really important that everyone tries their best to provide that statement. I'm so left-handed, and I'm trying to figure out how this mouse works. I'm going to talk to you about the relevance of the law when we talk about community college students with disabilities. And I will be giving you some additional resources to add to what has already been handed out. It will be the American with Disability Act pamphlet, Section 504, and confidentiality and disability. It's not in your folders. It's not in your booklets. I'll be giving you this after I have speak to you about this. Okay. So when we talk about disability, we really. I'm the Chief Diversity Officer here at Queensborough, and I'm responsible for making sure that we're in compliance with our university policies, which are based on the laws. So I'm here to talk to you with regards to framing it for you in terms of our policy statement. And as you can see, our policy statement is from the university, and it's an equal opportunity non-discrimination, and it's also against sexual harassment. And it basically tells you that we are following the policy of the City University of New York and as a constituent college to recruit, employ, retain, promote, provide benefits and to employees, but we also have to look at the part that relates to our customer base, which are our students. So we are also to admit and provide services to our students. And so this is done without regards to their protected class membership, and there's a long laundry list of protected classes that I wanted to give everybody an idea of how we basically encourage everyone to come here, to look for job opportunities here, to participate in our programs here. And one of the areas that's a protected class is disabilities. So all of this is done in the context for us in terms of really basically 3 laws. The Section 504 of the Rehabilitation Act of 1973, the Title II of the Americans with Disabilities Act of 1990, and the Americans with Disabilities Act Amendment Act of 2008. As a organization that receives funding from federal government, and as an organization that provides services, we are held to make sure that we are complying with these laws. So under Section 504, which was passed in 1973, it basically focuses again on the non-discrimination, and it reads that no otherwise qualified person with a disability in the United States shall, solely by the reason of their having a disability, be excluded from any of our programs, be denied benefits of our programs, or be subjected to any discrimination as they come and are on campus participating in any of our programs. And we are held to making sure that we provide auxiliary aids and what we refer to as accommodations to students with disabilities, because if we do not, that's considered discrimination and is prohibited by the 504. The other law is Title 2 of the Americans with Disabilities Act, and it prohibits, again, discrimination in any governmental services. And as I said, we are a service provider. And it also, Title II also requires that we provide reasonable accommodations, auxiliary aids, and services. So you can level the playing field and allow someone with a disability to come and participate, have access to our programs and our services. That non-discrimination requirement also requires that we make access available. So when you talk about buildings that predate the law itself, when you have a situation where you cannot rebuild the structure, you have to make accommodations and access available by either moving a class or providing a ramp, but we have to make sure that we make it accessible. Requires our making sure that everything that we communicate is made available to someone who may need a sign language interpreter or may need captioning. So communications is important. And it also requires that we provide and allow for people who use service animals at certain levels, that we allow that. And this is only done within the context we're held to, that we provide the accommodation and the access as long as it does not provide any safety risk. When you talk about the Americans with Disabilities Act, Amendment Act of 2008, things kind of shifted where the broader interpretation of what a disability is became apparent, became in law. And so we're not dealing with anything that just has a list of what is a disability, this, and this. So we have now gone to an expanded version of what is considered a disability. And we've also have an expanded version of what major life activities are. The Americans with Disabilities Act, Amendment Act also clarifies that disabilities include when someone has a condition that may occur occasionally or episodic, maybe episodic, or may go into remission, that is still considered a disability, as long as it's still considered to be substantially limiting a major life activity when it's active. And when you talk about the only thing that is considered an ameliorating effect that is not considered disability these days is, for those of you in the room who wear eyeglasses, that's not considered a disability. But there are other situations that the immediate rating effects of someone taking medication, that doesn't reduce their being considered as having a disability. So bottom line, a person with a disability has a mental or physical condition that substantially limits one or more of their major life activities. They may have a history or a record of having such a condition, or they may be conceived by others as having a condition. And as I said earlier, the ADA does not specifically name all of the disabilities which are covered. And the exceptions to our having to make sure that we are in compliance only come under 2 situations where there's a risk of safety and if it dramatically alters the requirements of the program. So we have a reasonable accommodation process here at QCC. We'll be working closely with Carlos and with Ben. And what that requires is for you just to know the process. They will deal with the things that will be considered, like I'll talk later about confidentiality. They evaluate the needs of each individual student. It's the student's responsibility to self-identify. So when the student comes to the office, they work with them. So the process really begins and ends with this Office of Student Services for Students with Disabilities. The process includes providing academic adjustments and auxiliary services to the individual who qualifies for the program. And it's done on a case-by-case basis, so you will find when they work with the students, they may find that a student may have a similar disability as another student, but their needs and how their needs are met are not the same because it's done by case by case and individualized. And of course, it's really all focused on the review documentation that the student provides to the office. And in their conversation and working with the student should be able to provide the office with information with how they're managing their disability, and that helps a lot in terms of their working with the office. Disability-related information is considered highly confidential, so you just need to know that there are some things you won't need to know. And Ben will let you know, based on how the process works, what you need to do on your side. Our accommodation process includes the documentation being provided to the office, and they review it and they work with the student to get the information. And our reasonable accommodations are identified, which are necessary to fulfill our mandate under both the ADA and the 504. I'm referring you to the website for the Office of Services for Students with Disabilities, because you'll find a wealth of information there. It indicates what is covered, what the law provides, services provided here, and there's an excellent piece on assistive technology. For a reference that I'm going to be giving you, there's the Association on Higher Education and Disability. They're a website that you may want to refer to, but I wanted to kind of give you 3 pieces that cover for you Section 504, the Americans with Disabilities Act, and confidentiality and disability. If you have any questions, please come see me. I'm the office where people have issues around their accommodations not being provided. After they work through working with the chair of the department or working with Ben's office to address any grade issues, if they're not happy with the resolution at that point, they may come to me. So at some point in time, I'm hoping it doesn't happen, but at some point in time, I may have to actually do an investigation into a complaint. I am responsible, as I said, for making sure that we are compliant with all of the laws. And so when a student has a complaint, they sometimes find their way to me, and I may be reaching out to you. And I will be working with Ben to identify exactly what the issues are, and then hopefully being able to resolve it before it goes outside. So I'd like to kind of turn it over to Ben, because they are the ones who kind of really manage this from beginning to end.
Okay. Thank you. Welcome, and thank you for coming. I can see by everything that's been up on the board so far that I'm going to leave my business card here, because I expect to have questions that may not get answered in 15 minutes, since I have a 2-hour presentation that I'm going to condense. All right, so what is the most important thing that you guys are going to walk away with today? Is that everything you saw, based upon anti-discrimination laws, that students with disabilities, they have to come, they have to self-identify, they have to provide documentation, they have to be approved for an accommodation, which is reasonable as per your reasonable accommodations guidebook. I'll get to that later. Okay, and once they fulfill all the processes in our office and are fully approved for an accommodation, we issue them an accommodation card, which is completely confidential in that it doesn't have their name. It has their CUNY ID number as an identifier and what accommodations they've been approved for. Rest assured, students do not walk in and say, hey, I want this, and we say, okay, let's give you that, give them a card. They jump through a lot of hoops and provide all the necessary background before they are approved for an accommodation. So should a student, and when a student self-identifies to you, you say, can I see your accommodation card? Should they not have a card, say, well, refer them back to SSD, okay? And you have to bring us a card. There are some cases they may come with a letter. A letter can accompany a card should it have relevant information that we can't fit on a card, or in some instances, we will provide a letter for a provisional accommodation based upon the student is in the process of securing the necessary supporting documentation, evidence that we need to issue them the card. Once they have the card, they've gone through it all, okay? So that's where your job will begin. They have self-identified and they have a card. Should a student approach you, just to repeat, and say, and self-identify and say they have a disability, you at that point can say, can I see your accommodation card? Now, the flip side of that, should you think the student has a disability, you are not supposed to ask them, do you have a disability? Okay? You can ask them probing questions, such as one that I always give to the faculty on new orientation. My favorite is, have you ever received special resources? Special resources I put together myself from special ed and resource room, and see if it triggers a response. Some students will jump out and say, yes, I've had resource room or I've had special ed. At that point, they've self-identified, okay? So confidentiality is a key. All right, so the accommodation card is what we're using here at QCC. Now, I do want to go over a few things and give you some things to walk away with so that you don't walk away with, oh my God, how much stuff do I need to know? All right, first of all, yes, the law is there, ADA is there. You guys are not responsible for determining who has a disability, and you're not supposed to probe the student. Once they self-identify, you refer them to us. So it was mentioned syllabi statement. All right, in the Reasonable Accommodations Handbook is a sample, page 3, of a syllabi statement. And I believe QCC has it as per Karen Steele, and I'll be happy to help you with them. But on page 3 is a sample syllabi statement that should be on all of your syllabi that you hand out, saying that if qualified students with disabilities, you don't have to write exactly what's here. You refer them back to either a confidential conversation, refer them to SSD, as we are known on this campus. It says OSSD, Office of Services for Students with Disabilities. So along the way it was shortened to SSD. Okay, and on every syllabus you hand out, it should be there. All right, and it should be spoken aloud when you review your syllabus. Should you have a disability, see me confidentially. All right, and at that point they're self-identifying, and you can refer them to us. Again, non-probe, you shouldn't be probing them about their disability. If they say they don't want to discuss it, okay, that is perfectly fine. All right, go get your accommodation card. Let me see what you're entitled to. This student was entitled to a calculator when appropriate and extended time, 2x, okay? You could have 1.5x. All right, so exam accommodations, we're here to help you guys accommodate. All right, a number of you have already met me. Some of you will come in contact with a student with a disability, and you'll hopefully contact our office and we'll have some answers. All right, I was asked to go over a few key things. So I handed in the difference between high school and college students with disabilities. All right, some key areas. Students in high school, it's mandated service, and one of the things they say on the first page, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, accommodations are provided to ensure the success of the student. In high school, let me repeat it, accommodations are provided to ensure the success of the student. In college, accommodations are provided to ensure equal access. We do not guarantee success. We level the playing field with a reasonable accommodation to give them an equal access, which is a chance to succeed. Okay? So services are voluntary, they're not mandated. So we do not go after the students, they come to us and request the accommodations. They're adults. Another one is going down to the bottom of the same page. The Buckley Amendment requires that the student give permission to personnel to talk to parents. Some of you, and I know some of you have gotten it, parents come up to you. You're not obligated to talk to them. They have to have written consent. Same in our office. Student says, oh, I want my parents to call. All right, they cannot call and do everything for the student. All right, they have to give us written consent. Now, I brought that one up because there's a lot of talk on the severity of disability. And our population actually mirrors the population of QCC. Everybody in this room, I think, is here because of the left side of the bell curve where all of the severe disabilities occur and give us issues that we need to work with. You guys hear nothing about the majority of that. You saw the number 699? You guys don't hear anything about those students who just need a little extra time or distraction-free environment and go through with very high GPAs. All right? You're here because you're encountering students who have issues that we need to work with. So take solace in that SSD exists to help you. We help the students, and we help you help the students so that we can support and make sure that the campus is in compliance with the ADA. All right? A couple of other highlights on this just to move through. Students are responsible for their own behavior, and inappropriate behavior is not tolerated. Absolute. Student with a disability has no permission to not adhere to QCC behavioral guidelines. Okay? They are not, you as professors are not expected to water down the coursework. They're expected to fulfill all the obligations of class material. All right? We're here to give them an equal chance to do that. All right? Along those lines, there are some cases that a student may require an alternate testing format. All right? It's rare, but it comes up at times that a student can demonstrate their knowledge in an alternate format. All right? What's a good example? A good example is a student who has dyslexia and maybe has no use of their arms and can demonstrate orally. All right, I'm just thinking off the top of my head. I didn't come with a specific example. But oral exam is perfectly permissible for you to, in coordination with the student and maybe through us, if that student can demonstrate they've learned your course material. Because that's at the bottom line. Can they demonstrate they've learned the course material? all right? And accommodations cannot undermine what you're teaching, all right? But if they can demonstrate they've learned the course material, then they can prove that they learned what's going on in your class. So, special resources, confidentiality, syllabi statement. All right, I told you about the good news, that most students just need a little more time. There's a lot of students with hidden disabilities, okay? And you may say, hey, this student doesn't look like they need an accommodation. They don't look like they have a disability. Again, that's what we're here for, to help you, to be a liaison, to be an advocate, to help both you and the student determine these things, okay? So, self-identification, parents versus student, resources, alternate testing format. Are students qualified to be here? I get that all the time. Why? For those few students who squeak through the door. We do not accept these students onto the campus. They have graduated with a high school diploma and made it into your matriculated programs. Now, what happens if they didn't graduate and they're not in a matriculated program? QCC allows students to come to campus in non-matriculated programs with no prerequisites. They can pay out of pocket and take a course as long as there's no prerequisite. That's not for us to decide. We're here to accommodate the students once they wound up in your classrooms legitimately. All right, legitimately meaning that QCC registered them, they're in the class, they fulfilled whatever prerequisite they needed to get there, and they're there. Okay? So we don't grant entry, we just ensure and support the ADA. So, gray areas, case by case. There's no cookie cutter mold. There is not. You cannot say, well, this student has a learning disability, this is what they get. This student's deaf, this is what they get. Because the truth of the matter is, this student who's deaf may want a sign language interpreter. This student who's deaf may want a captioning. This student with a learning disability may need one type of accommodation. Another student will need another type of accommodation. Again, that's what we're here to work with. And sometimes we have to work with the student to figure it out. All right, because sometimes it might be a new disability. Maybe it's not something they grew up with. Maybe it's something that just came up recently. Okay, so in the handouts you have, let me just review quickly what you have. All right, you have the Reasonable Accommodations Guide that's put out by CUNY and is in the process of being updated. All right, the last time it was updated, I believe, was 2009, and it is due for an update, and it's in process. Who does this? The Council on Student Disability Issues, who I'm currently chairing, and Carlos Herrera is actually working on the committee, and a number of other directors throughout CUNY. So they're updating this guide. When we have new ones, we will provide you with the link, because I don't think CUNY's going to put hard copies anymore, which can be found at CATSWeb. All right, and I believe CATSWeb was given out to you guys. So that's a resource for you. Small brochure, Services for Students with Disabilities. Brochure, Assistive Technology. There's going to be a workshop on assistive technology. There's lots of technologies we use to help our students. Okay, inside you have the email that I sent and circulate, and every semester I tell you guys. And this one was important. It didn't give you a whole lot of information, but it told you about the accommodations card and the yellow testing accommodations form. So should a student present you with a yellow testing accommodations form and say, hey, I need extra time on my exams, you say, can I see your accommodation card? Because those forms are publicly available, downloadable, and you don't have to do anything to get them. You just take them off the wall. Very rare, but it could happen, okay? And then you have a handout from the Compass Project, who you're about to hear from, all right? Mitch Nagler and Evan Oppenheimer have been working through SSD, helping our students on the spectrum with Asperger's, and sometimes they go beyond and help see other students. And the focus on today is going to be on Asperger's, right? Asperger's and the spectrum. So, what do we do with the explosion of students? I use that word loosely because I remember 6, 7 years ago being on one of the council's meetings, and they're saying, okay, students with Asperger's are coming, what are we going to do? All right, well, every semester we're getting more and more students who are diagnosed, they're on the spectrum of some sort, they've made it through high school, they've made it through, however they've made it onto our campuses, and now we're here and we must accommodate. So, some of the key issues you're going to be hearing about. I'm not privy to the presentation, and I'll be here and, you know, just to, I may have some of my own questions what they're going to say, but what's coming to us is usually behavior and how students are behaving in the classrooms. All right, so there's a number of key ways that I've helped a number of you guys. They need structure, they need guidelines, they need reinforcement, they need to be told. In some cases, they need to have an aide with them to help them control their behaviors. That's not a mark on their intellect. And the one thing that I always hear anytime I go to a presentation on Asperger's is if you've met one person with Asperger's, you've met one person with Asperger's, because there is no identical way to handle each one. But they're here, they can do the classwork, they can earn good grades in your class, and in a lot of cases they're going to be inappropriate in the class because they are not familiar or they're not capable of adhering to social norms. Okay, so it's going to come down to behavioral issues. All right, that does not give them a permission to violate the guidelines that QCC puts forth. And should you encounter something that you question, pick up the phone, call us, contact us. Okay, everybody knows where we're located. Science 132. You know SSD. You have me. You have Carlos. We have the library 115 as our lab for testing accommodations, and we have tutoring support for remediation. Okay. And also an assistive technology lab. So, I know that Mitch is not here, and I know that Evan Oppenheimer, they're not here yet, so I thought that I would run through some of that. And does anybody want to have a burning question they want to ask? I knew it. Okay, we'll take a few questions. Go ahead. First, we'll go around.
I've been to the office several times.
Go ahead.
I've spoken with you and other counsel. I think my concern was that what brought me down there initially was that
Let's leave names out if possible.
no, yeah,
Okay.
I had a student who, in particular, had taken the class that he was my student. He had already taken this class, I believe, maybe 3 or 4 times.
Okay.
So it was evident that maybe just an accommodation for a test or being able to use a calculator or getting extended time wasn't enough. So I was concerned about what other services are available to them to not just give them extended time and let them use a calculator when other students cannot. What else can they, what is offered in order to assist them through that?
Excellent question. That is an excellent question. All right, Services for Students with Disabilities exists to ensure that students are granted reasonable accommodations, okay? I get a lot of questions, all right? Let's go back to the word, reasonable accommodations, something that's not an undue burden. We are not, again, back to this statement, here to ensure success. You're going to have students that cannot make it in your classes, okay? So what's the reasonable accommodations? They're entitled to whatever the support for that particular disability can give. Maybe the student can't make it in your class because they can't make it. They don't have the intellect. It goes down to that simple. When they're sitting in front of me and discussing their transcripts, there's door number 1 and door number 2, and sometimes we have to make some hard calls, okay? Some of those hard calls are, well, you can't pass BE 121 with intense tutoring, and you've taken it 5 times. What do we do? What is it you want to do with your life? Okay, are you studying? I had a student today, very similar situation, mother in my office, we're talking about his future. He has taken BE 121 5 times. And when I asked him, well, are you studying? He says, what do you do when you go home? Do you study? Do you go on the computer? Can you tell me how much you study in a given week? He says, I go home, I study for a minute. Okay, lots of issues, case by case. We don't ensure success. Okay, there's lots of things that have been given. It's not a cookie cutter mold. The student doesn't get 10 hours of tutoring for one hour or for one class. So there are limited resources, and the answer is that some students are not qualified. They're not going to make it. Okay, the ones that are here, we have lots of success stories, but some of them don't make it. Okay, the accommodations that you mentioned, are they supported by their documentation? Sure. Are there assistive technology programs that they should be using? It's all offered. The student is an adult and must grasp on. Okay, you asked something, and I just mentioned on assistive technology for a second. I had a student that came in, all right, years ago. Everybody said, what's he doing here? He's not going to make it. I was not the director at this point, okay? And he said he can't communicate. He's nonverbal. He's got cerebral palsy. We can't understand him. We can't use his arms. He can't use his feet. There's no way for him to communicate. All right, how is he going to demonstrate he learned the material? This man was at the initial onset of assistive technologies, is when he came into the system. Somebody developed a head tapping device for him because he could control his neck. That's it. All he could control was his neck. He started tapping. All right, somebody developed an assistive technology program so that when he tapped, the letters and then word prediction came up on the screen. All right. Again, so you did that. He's gonna. What's gonna happen with him? End of that story is that man has a law degree and writes briefs today. Okay. Still no better in his disability, but that's how he communicates. So we don't know, case by case. All right. Did he make it? Yes. Did the guy right behind him make it? No. All right. So it's not a short, easy answer. You were next.
What does Asperger stand for?
Asperger's. What does it stand for? Anybody? I'm not sure. Is somebody's name? That's a good question. You got me stumped on that one. We're going to ask Mitch. Mitch, perfect timing. What is it? What does Asperger stand for, Mitch?
Go ahead.
Dr. Hans Asperger.
What's that?
Somebody's name. That's what I thought. I just didn't know it was an acronym. And last question before I go and introduce Mitch. Come on, you're up. All right. Somebody who had one more question for me. Go ahead.
I teach painting, and just this semester, a student walked into my class with I've met her once, with severe visual limitations, and she walks with a cane, and I don't know. I'm sure she can still do beautiful paintings with what limited vision she has, but how am I allowed to approach her without violating any?
Did she identify as having a disability?
The cane doesn't count.
Well, all right. I'm not sure exactly who you're talking about, so why don't we talk about this later when we can pinpoint who it is and how we can help her. Maybe she's brand new and is not. Sometimes students forget. We give them orientation. We review the process. We review their obligation to self-identify, and then they forget. So we remind them. All right. When I do an intake on a student, I tell them, listen, I've given you a mouthful. All right. I don't expect you to remember half the things I just said. The door's always open. Come back. All right. There are things you're going to need to know. We're always here. Somebody can always answer the question. So yes, this student is visually impaired. I don't know if she's totally blind from what you're describing. Can she be in your class? Yes. How are we going to accommodate her? Give us a call, and we'll take it from there. All right. But absolutely, we are here. We are a resource for you. All right. We accommodate students. We help coordinate the reasonable accommodations, and we are here to answer your questions and to help you get through the semesters. Okay. And all of you, you know, my information is here. Carlos is here. Andrew just walked into the room, also an accommodation specialist. And I guess right now I'm going to turn it over to Mitch Nagler from JCCA, who's going to talk to you about Asperger's and give you his presentation.
So, I do want to just introduce myself, and Mitch Nagler here is an old colleague of mine, and so via the work that we've been doing with Ben, I thought it would be great for Mitch to come share some of his insights because he does work on Adelphi campus. Works as a professor. He's also a licensed mental health counselor, and as am I. I'm also a licensed mental health counselor, and I work with the Jewish Child Care Association's Compass Project. We have a social work intern named Lindsay Birnbaum, who is on campus here 2 days a week, working directly with students in the Office of Disability Services to provide some supports and work on some of the issues that Mitch is going to talk about, that I'll probably jump in and share some insights with him about as well. And so that's sort of our role here, is to help provide support as the students are transitioning through college and then hopefully out into the workforce or potentially into another college. And so we really want to work towards providing supports in the areas of executive functioning, social skills, so that way they are ready and prepared to get out there in the world. And as people who are directly in contact with a number of the individuals that we're working with, you're on the front lines even more so than we are. So giving you some tools and resources that are going to be hopefully beneficial to supporting these students is really our goal in the work that we do here with Queensborough. And hopefully you'll get some good insight from Mitch, as I know you will. And I will let Mitch take it away and tell you a little bit about himself too.
Okay, so I'm the director at Adelphi of a program that's called the Bridges to Adelphi program. It actually started as a granted program through the JCCA. But it grew so fast and so quickly, and it outgrew the grant. So it is now a full-time program at the university. It is for self-identified students with Asperger syndrome or other nonverbal learning disorders. We currently have 60 kids in the program that get, and I'll explain some of the service we give. I've already had 30 applicants for the fall. Students have to be accepted to the university first. They have to make academic criteria first. It's not, I can't waive in or out. Once they're in the university and they opt to be in the program, they're in. I anticipate we'll probably end up with 20 this year and then probably another 20 next year. So they're talking about capping at 100. All the service that's provided is provided by grad students, psychology, school psychology, social work, communication theory. And my goal today is to let you know a little bit more about Asperger's, like some of the background of it, how it works, and then to tell you how some of the kids look and what you can do in the classrooms. And yes, transition's a big issue, denial is a big issue. I actually had a student who told me, I used to have Asperger's, but I don't have it anymore. So yeah, that's a big issue. So let's see if this actually works. Whoa, that's so see that? Okay, we'll start there. So Asperger's is a pervasive, that's the key word here, it's pervasive. Students you know who have LDs have a defined LD. I have a math LD. That only affects me when X and Y shows up. I haven't, it's true. I haven't actually, I never took a math class in college. My last math class was in 9th grade. But if I had to take a math class, I would have to get extra help. I have a documented LD, but only in math. Asperger's is pervasive. It's known as a pervasive developmental disorder. You may know it as like a PDD. You ever hear that term? Which means it gets in everywhere. It's in their academic life, it's in their social life. Ultimately, it's going to get into their vocational life. It comes with a variety of other problems, including interpersonal communication and what we call executive functioning skills. I'll get into that later. It's also known as a nonverbal learning disorder, and 70% of communication is nonverbal. It's all this stuff. So they could be missing anywhere from 1 to 70% of the information. And if you were trying to do a math equation and you were missing 1 to 70% of the information, how likely is it that you would get the right answer? So a lot of what happens socially for these folks and in your classes, because what's going on between you and them is in interpersonal communication, they could be missing important information there. It's a spectrum disorder. It exists on the autism spectrum, but it has its own spectrum, and it's never the same twice in a row. There are so many factors that go into it that no two, I see about 100 people a week between the program at Adelphi, and I have 2 private practices. It's rarely the same twice in a row. Wow, this thing is super quick. Okay, we'll try that one. So, you know, what would these people have in common? Why would I ask? Is because everybody on that list has or is thought to have had Asperger's syndrome. All of those people, in their own way, are extremely creative. And that's something that I talk about all the time, is that people with Asperger's definitely see the world differently and think about things differently. It's because they have a pervasive developmental disorder. It's neurocognitive. It's a brain thing. The idea is to try to get them to express it in some positive way. So I often say to the students, the good news is that you have Asperger's, and the bad news is that you have Asperger's. If we can get somebody who can manage it like Bill Gates did, or like Steven Spielberg does, that's a really good thing. But one of the things that I'm always searching for with the students I work with is their creativity and some way for them to express this different way that they see it, because it's extremely troubling to know it. You know, Asperger's exists on the autism spectrum, right? At the far end, you did this one yet? Okay, wow. I'm having a lot of trouble with that.
You just click.
I'm trying.
Scroll part and it'll just click through. You can use the arrow key too on the keyboard, and that'll put the one.
Oh, that's probably better, right? Way better.
Okay.
So I'm always searching for creativity and ways for them to express themselves, because it's frustrating to be aware of what your weaknesses are and not be able to do it. People with hardcore autism are usually mentally retarded. We don't really see them. And in my experience working with them, they don't need a whole lot to be happy. Folks with Asperger's are aware every single day what they can't do. They're extremely aware of their social and academic struggles. And oftentimes, it comes with an extremely high IQ. So they could think that they're the smartest person in the room all the time, and they may be, because I deal with kids whose IQs are way north of 130. But they can't figure out what's going to happen in the next 10 seconds. So it's extremely frustrating. There is no single defining test to diagnose Asperger's. There's no blood test, there's no MRI, there's no CAT scan. We do screenings. We test, we screen for things called empathy. There's an autism scale. There's lots of different tests and screens. Nothing is definitive. It's more of an art on the diagnosis, and what we hear all the time is that if it looks like a duck and it walks like a duck and it quacks like a duck, it's probably a duck. So for you guys, when you may be able to identify it, maybe your radar is not quite as defined as mine, but I'm sure if any of you think through your classes or back into your childhoods, you can pretty much figure out who was or who wasn't, or take a good guess at it. The primary diagnostic criteria is difficulties with social interactions. It's a right brain disability, the right side of your brain. And the key thing here is that Asperger's is not mental illness. It's a neurodevelopmental disorder. They're not psychotic, they don't have schizophrenia. This is not bipolar disorder. This is a neurocognitive disorder. It's as if it's a brain wiring thing. If the student was deaf or blind, it would be a brain wiring thing. Asperger's syndrome is a brain wiring thing. What happens, though, is that they develop secondary psychiatric characteristics because of that. Hopefully that'll come up next. Here's the left brain, right brain. So if it affects the right side of your brain, these are some of the things that people with Asperger's have difficulty with. They have difficulty processing their feelings. They have difficulty seeing big pictures, holistic thinking. They're very good at detail, but not very good at weaving the detail into a complex picture. They have difficulty with ambiguity. They have difficulty with jokes, understanding jokes. They have difficulty, well, not always recognizing patterns or processing art, but definitely interpreting body language. That's a nonverbal communication, body language, right? So they would definitely have trouble with that. And then if you look at the left side, these are some things that they're good at. Linear thinking and logic, extremely logical to a fault. In fact, they will find the loophole. Oftentimes, we have people who we refer to as loophole thinkers, who can find the minor crack in anything that we say to them. They do hate confusion, and they try to put things in order, and they are extremely literal. That's the joke thing, and that's when you communicate with them. They are extremely literal. They will take you word for word, and if you're not really serious about it, that could cause a problem for them. We could go on from there.
If I could add, actually, that's where oftentimes sarcasm can be problematic, and sometimes we are just very sarcastic even without even knowing it.
Yeah.
And something to be mindful of, especially if you're working one-on-one with somebody, that it's directly tied into that Mitch was talking about.
So this is sort of the autistic spectrum thing. On the left side is what we call low functioning. Those folks usually end up in residential communities, at this age at least. We don't see too much of them. The IQ for mental retardation, is most of you probably know, is 70. On the right side is what we call high functioning autism, or Asperger's or PDDs. The essential difference for me between Asperger's and high functioning autism is communication skills. I have a guy who I work with, I have many guys who I work with. This particular guy is a math genius, math and computer genius, but he's really non-communicative. He really won't speak. He's very uncomfortable in one-on-one situations, and if you had him in one of your classes, it would be very difficult to deal with him. If it was a computer class, he'd turn out genius level work. But if you tried to have a conversation with him or explain something to him that was non-math related, it would be very, very difficult. So Asperger's and high-functioning autism are separated by the communication level that folks have. These are some of the common comorbids, what we say, comorbid psychiatric diagnoses. The two primaries are anxiety and depression. And if you think about it, it makes perfect sense. Remember, Asperger's is typically an average or above average IQ. So if you're aware of your surroundings, aware that you're not getting it, if you've been socially tortured your entire K through 12 life, which a lot of the kids have been, and who said PTSD before? I'm pretty sure that most of the students that I see have PTSD. They have been tortured, they have been left out, they have been the last one picked or not picked at all. They have been lockered. Anybody knows this to be lockered? Guys get lockered. I had a student who in high school was told that the captain of the cheerleaders team was in love with him. And out in like the main area of the, the whole lobby of the high school, and they told him, go ask around, go ask around. So of course he goes and asks around, and of course she's horrified, and there's 100 people standing around him laughing. That is a traumatic experience. When everybody gets invited to the party and you don't, that is a traumatic experience. If it happens over and over and over again, it can cause people to be extremely anxious. If you fail socially over and over and over again in one-on-ones, if you go into a group in a class and you can't communicate with everybody, and they're doing everything around you and they're not communicating with you, that is a repeat of the traumatic experience. So anxiety and depression are the result of, they are not primary diagnoses. If they didn't have Asperger's, they would likely not be anxious and depressed. However, you will see anxiety in people who have Asperger's. That's probably the most common. And then 25% of adults, and we'll consider these folks adults, have OCD. OCD is an anxiety response. It's just an intense anxiety response to screw the world down. Things are out of control, so you try to put them in order and do things somehow so you have some sense of control. One of my rules is anxiety up, performance down. The more anxious they get, the worse they'll do on an exam, the worse they'll do socially, the worse they'll do in the classroom. And PTSD, as we said before. This is a thinking style that most people that I work with have. This is actually a cognitive behavioral therapy concept. It's called automatic negative thinking, or as we tell the kids, ants. There's sort of these three circles, and we refer to them as circle one is I'm no good. I failed so many times, I'm just no good. People don't like me. Circle two is that I don't understand anybody else and they don't understand me. And circle three is that I have failed before, I don't want to fail again. Then I'm just not going to do it. And that's what you will run up against a lot in your classes. Anything that doesn't come really easy, this is a very common response. I'm not going to do it. I'll just avoid it. They may not even tell anybody. This is all internal dialogue. Automatic negative thoughts are always based on the same thing. Anybody take that class? Anybody know what they're based on all the time? False beliefs. They're never true. But they've been thinking this way their whole lives. They've been odd their whole lives. They've been the odd duck their whole lives. So they develop this thinking style. It starts very simply, and then it sort of grows inside their head. And first it's a seed, and then it's a plant, and then it's a tree, and then it's a forest, and then it's a whole world. And their whole life thinking style is organized around these three beliefs. And you'd be surprised how adhesive this can be. It's very hard to break this kind of thinking, and there's only really one way, is to challenge it and to say it's not true. A million times a week I say, could we just try an experiment? Could you just try it this way for today? Could you try it this way for a week? Could you just submit the paper? But it is a very adherent thinking style. Some of the outcomes of ants are people use defense mechanisms to protect themselves against uncomfortable thoughts. The most primitive defense mechanism that human beings have is called denial. That's the guys that don't sign up anymore because they used to need help, but they don't need help anymore. That's the kid who used to have Asperger's. Denial is 100% effective in the short term. We've been doing it since we've been infants and we were waiting to get fed. Somebody's going to come to feed me, I know that. Somebody's going to come and change my diaper. It's extremely effective in the short term, but it fails 100% of the time in the long term. They can deny and they can avoid and they cannot work on your paper or your assignment or study for your test or read the book or do whatever it is that you ask them. In the short term, they can pretend it's okay. But in the long term, it always fails. And that is the primary defense mechanism that I see. So if they're in denial, they're not likely to ask for help. And they will isolate themselves, they will avoid, and they will procrastinate. I had a student who came to me, he was in Syracuse University. He really hit the skids on this stuff. He stayed in his dorm room, and this is not an uncommon story. I call this going upside down. He was in his dorm room for a month. He never went to class, brought food in, you know, ran out to the food machine to bring it in. He said to me he knew he was in trouble when he wouldn't go to the bathroom anymore, and he started using the empty soda bottles. Yeah, and his parents were calling every day. Now, you know, you talk about the difference between high school and college. It's not just that services are mandated or delivers. Mom and dad are out. Moms usually, some moms anyway, are their executive functioning. They are the frontal lobe of their brains. They have been saying to the kids, have you, did you, when did, let me see it, let me help you, let's go, come on, come on, come on. Wake up. Here's a big difference. If kids dorm and mom's been waking them up every day, they may not get up. And in high school, we take attendance. In college, not so much. And if they don't go, mom and dad are not getting called. This can just go on, and nobody knows. I had a student who was a commuter, like here. Mom brought him to school every single day, dropped him off outside every single day, picked him up at night every single day. He never went to class the whole semester. I found out when he had his finals, and he was laying on the floor of my office crying. He never went to class. That's a form of denial. I'll go tomorrow, I'll go tomorrow, I'll go tomorrow. I'll go tomorrow turns into, oh shit, if I go, the teacher's going to be angry at me, the students are going to make fun of me, so now I can't go. And when they cross that line, they live there. He never went the whole semester. That is a huge difference. Taking care of yourself, getting your work done, being places on time, eating, sleeping, getting your meals. This is all issues that had been taken care of by other people until they got here, including getting your accommodations. In high school, it's delivered to you. In college, you got to go get it. I don't know exactly how you guys do it, but at Adelphi, we have a form that now you can do electronically. You have to file it. It's supposed to be a week, but it's 2 or 3 days before the exam. And then DSS gets that form electronically, and they contact the faculty member, and then you get an email that says you can come to DSS at this time and take your exam. But you got to do it, because if you don't do it, guess what? You're not getting testing accommodations. And if you need a note taker, you got to file a form. So if you're in isolation, avoidance, and procrastination, it's likely you're not going to do that. And if mom has been taking care of you, because these are great moms, but it doesn't carry forward. We have FERPA. Everybody knows what FERPA is, right? That says mom and dad are out. They just get the bill.
I'm curious, has anybody gotten phone calls from moms and dads?
You're under no obligation. That too. Technically, am I correct to say they need written consent? Technically, you need written consent from the student to talk to anybody. In the program in the Bridges program, I get 4 consents from every student in the program. I don't demand it, but pretty much I demand it. DSS, because if you're getting accommodations, it would be helpful for me to speak to them. Student Counseling Center, so if there's a mental health issue and they're getting counseling, it would be helpful for me to be able to speak to them. Faculty members, we send out emails to every faculty member. We did this last week. By the way, I have 15 grad students working for me. One of the grad students' job is to email faculty for every student and say, Johnny is in your class, he's registered, he's enrolled in the Bridges program, he's given me written consent to contact you, can you give me an update? That starts in the 3rd week, because I don't want to bias thinking of faculty, because a lot of people have Asperger's wrong. They think it's mental illness. And so that goes around, that email goes the whole semester. And then the 4th one is parents. I do get consent for parents, but I only use it if the kid's in danger. If the kids are not in danger, if they're just being kids, or if they're just struggling and I feel that we can get them through, I don't contact parents. I won't meet with parents without the students there as well. I'm happy to have a parent meeting, but the students got to be with them. So those are some of the big differences on a little bit of a rant there. Some other cognitive issues is that on IQ tests, typically verbal IQ will be higher than performance IQ. If you think about that, it sort of makes sense as well. If you ever get to look at these things, if you get to look at neuropsychophals. Executive functioning. So executive functioning, most folks think of it as things you're probably all good at, or maybe not. Planning, organizing, keeping things in order, knowing when to start and stop. If you've got a test, you've got a paper, you've got a presentation, which do you do? You know, what's time? Time management. That's what most people think about executive functioning with. I think about it a lot of other ways. It is controlled by the frontal lobe of your brain, and that's what the moms have become. The moms were their frontal lobes. So besides planning and organizing, it's about self-care. It's about waking up in the morning. It's about taking a shower. It's about wearing clean clothes. It's about taking your meds. It's about eating regularly. It's about going to sleep at the right time, not staying up until 5 in the morning chasing video games down. Or I had a guy who told me that he was studying for his bio exam, and he was a bio major at the time. And at 8 o'clock, he sat down to study for his bio exam. At 2 o'clock in the morning, he had opened 200 windows on Mozilla. And he was like, Mitch, do you know that you could open 200 windows on Mozilla? I'm like, that's great, except you had a final at 8 o'clock in the morning. What the hell are you doing? Oh, yeah, that too. All I can think of is how long it takes to back out of that. So these are all frontal lobe issues. Cognitive issues is concrete thinking. It's very hard for them to take a different approach. Very hard to change their opinion, particularly about themselves. But just in general, it could be a polycyclist. I had a kid talking to me today about a polycyclist, and he has this firm belief about a political system. He's not coming off it. And you know what? Maybe he's right. You know, he thinks about things differently. And I encourage him to write about that for his class. Colleges, you're not just supposed to regurgitate information. When I teach, I don't want kids to tell me what's in the textbook. I know what's in the textbook already, and I know what my lecture was. I want to know what you think, and you don't have to agree with me. That's the first day of class every semester. So concrete thinking gets in their way. They have processing problems, information in, information out. Not for us, it just happens fluidly. For a lot of students that have Asperger's, that is a serious problem. You can sometimes feel like on live TV they have this 7-second delay so that they can hit the button if somebody says a dirty word. So these guys can have like a 7-second, a 10-second, a 10-minute, a 2-day delay. Information's going in, but it's going through the labyrinth of their brain. And it doesn't move at the same speed as ours does. And so in a classroom, that could be a problem. On an exam, that could be a problem. If you call on him or her, that could be a problem. By the way, it's typically found 4-to-1 men to women. It's basically a male diagnosis. But if you think about it, if social activities, social interactions are the primary diagnostic criteria, women are sort of culturally taught to be more social. You know how guys are. You know, we are still primitive beings. And when we get upset, we tend to retreat. Women, when they get upset, tend to move forward. So that's why we do well with football and video games, and that's why women keep moving forward. Women with Asperger's, I've had 2 girls I worked with at Adelphi who got in trouble with public safety for stalking. Essentially the same reason. They got interested in the guy. They kept going after him outside the door, outside his dorm room, outside classrooms. Public safety brought him in. The guy complained. You cannot stalk Johnny. Okay, no problem. 2 weeks later, same thing happens with a different guy. And here's the concrete thinking thing. You only said Johnny, Mitch. You didn't say, so my bad. You cannot stalk anybody. So girls tend to move forward. They're like sharks. Sharks need to move forward to live. The girls with Asperger's need to move forward. We had a little romance going on one time, and the guy was not into it, but she was way into it. And finally, they ended up in my office one day, and his back was against the wall, and she was up in his face like this. And we had to do a little relationship therapy. But that's a pretty standard thing that happens. The girls get in trouble a lot for pursuing guys, and often I had a girl in my office last week who got a text from somebody she didn't know, but it was a guy, and she had never had a boyfriend, and she sees everybody else texting their boyfriends. So for 3 days she's texting with some guy. She has no idea who he is, but you know, it's good. I finally got and she thinks it's his boyfriend, her boyfriend. You know, it's not a good thing, and we took care of that. Fortunately, she did not give any personal information. So we have names for everything. This is these are other cognitive issues. We have something we call theory of mind. The short story is it's the ability to understand that somebody does not think about something the same way that you do. Some of the guys on the spectrum will think that because they think this way, everybody thinks this way. And they can't understand why they wouldn't, because to them it's extremely logical. They've thought it through very carefully. And so if you're a poli-sci major, or maybe not history, but something like that, poli-sci, law student, you know, even in psychology and social work, people have different opinions of theories. This is a big problem, but it's also a problem in your everyday life. Not everybody thinks about things the same way. And in fact, they don't understand that when they do something that's odd or inappropriate, other people would get upset. So here's an expression that we use all the time in our office. When you do that, other people think this. When you come in and start dominating a conversation, people don't like that. This is not a criticism. I'm just giving you a heads up. People don't like that. So if the kids, they're just not getting it. They have no theory of mind. Central coherence theory is what I talked about. They're able to pick up lots of small pieces of information, lots of small factoids, but they can't weave it together. Well, they can't. They have difficulty weaving it together into a tapestry, so it means something. So they have lots of random facts, sometimes, not all the time. And visual scanning and facial recognition, I absolutely positively deal with kids who tell me, I don't remember faces. I don't remember faces. So if we make we have a part of the program is we do peer mentoring. We get volunteers from the university. We partner them up with the kids in the Bridges program. And we ask those kids, who are the kids that make the campus go anyway, to get them, the Bridges kids, involved in campus activities. They will say to me all the time, you better have the first few meetings here because I'm not going to recognize them if I have to meet them someplace else. It's just a brain wiring thing. It's not that they don't want to. They're not being oppositionally defiant. It's just a brain wiring thing. This could be helpful for you, identifying different thinking styles. There are people that are visual thinkers. These are your artists. They see the world and think about things in pictures. They could be good in geometry and trigonometry because that's about shapes, but they will not be good in anything above that. So maybe I'm like that because I didn't even make trigonometry. But they are good at graphics, they're good at animation, they're good at architecture, they're good at industrial design. They are painters, they are sculptors, all of those things. They see things. Photography. Then we have people who are pattern thinkers, who see the connection between information, music, math, computer programming, and foreign language. Those are all things that are patterns. If you can follow the pattern, they all go together. And then we have people we call verbal thinkers, who have amazing ability to acquire massive amounts of information. Massive amounts of information, to the extent of having maybe a photographic memory. People who know, I had a kid, we were having a group meeting, and he just stood up, essentially high-functioning autism because he's not very verbal, and he draws this big shape on the board, and he says, "Does anybody know what this is?" Nobody knows what it is. So he goes on to do the entire map of Central and South America. Every country with every capital on the map. It took him about 10 minutes, but he did it. He can learn massive amounts of information. He's extremely concrete in the way that he sees things. He will be good in maybe as an economist, maybe as a statistician, things like that. Record keeping. But he's not going to be good at drawing another visual, something visual. So if you can identify who your guys are and how they think, that could be helpful to you, depending on what you teach. If you're teaching math and you get a verbal guy, that's going to be tough. And you're going to get him. Because it is 1 in 88, right?
Mm-hmm. 1 in 54 boys.
There you go. Here are some possible writing challenges. If you have a student in a writing class, they're going to be extremely concrete. They're going to have processing and language. There's a lot of dysgraphia out there, dreadful handwritings. I have a kid who, in a physics class, the professor had to get a special program to put on the kid's laptop because he got the right answers, but there was no way to determine how he got the right answer because his handwriting was it's just dreadful. But language deficits, converting thoughts to cohesive text, that's an abstract process, right? If you're a concrete thinker, abstract processes are very difficult. Interpreting assignments, if you have, what's the difference between this reading and that reading, that could present a serious problem. So this is the bottom line, is the most dreaded question that anybody I work with can get. Compare and contrast. That's like, remember circle 3? I can't do that, I'm never going to do that, I'm going to fail, so instead, guess what? I'm not doing nothing because I don't want to fail anymore. And that becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy because if you take that path, guess what happens? You fail. So just to review, it's a pervasive neurodevelopmental nonverbal learning disorder. Anxiety and depression leads to avoidance and procrastination. Denial, the same thing. All the cognitive issues. Asperger's is not mental illness. And in light of the current stuff that happened up in Connecticut, individuals with Asperger's syndrome are far more likely to become victims of crimes than the perpetrators of crimes. They will be the guys who are busted for carrying because the other guys were smart enough not to carry. They'll be the guys that will go out to 7-Eleven and buy liquor because the other guys know they're underage and they're not going. But these guys want to have friends. They want to have friends. And they will do pretty much anything they need to do to think they have friends. I had a student who came in. The mom knew somebody. He became the manager of the baseball team, which was really great because that gets him involved on campus. Except the baseball players took him out one night, and he did 20 shots of tequila. 20 shots of tequila. He ended up in the hospital with alcohol poisoning. Comes back to campus, walks all over campus all day with his stuff all over him like his red badge of courage. They send him back to me, and I'm like, "What are you doing?" He said, "Mitch, I've been waiting my whole life for this." I said, "Well, you're not going to do it again, are you?" He goes, "Oh, I'm definitely doing it again." Because those guys are my friends. And after he did it a couple of times, he was completely convinced that the bartenders were his friends. Because they like him, they talk to him. So they are far more likely to be the victims than the perpetrators. I would not be afraid of a kid with Asperger's syndrome going off and being violent on the campus. That just does not fit. Just does not fit. Yeah?
You mentioned, it says here about cognitive issues. It seems though that those issues are, I don't want to say selective, but almost just for very specific areas, because it seems like maybe for certain areas academically they struggle extremely.
Yeah.
But then in other areas they excel far.
They can be. They can. So it's never the same twice in a row. There are kids that are masters in computers and math. I have a kid who plays 8 musical instruments. What he was doing as a business major, I can't tell you. But he's not going to be a business major anymore. He's going to be a music major. I have a kid who has, he's a history major, but he has perfect pitch. So he sings in the choir. I have kids that are fantastic artists, but can't do history and math. So the idea is to try to identify what their area of strength is. And they know very well what their areas of weakness are. It's very helpful if we can help them find their areas of strength. That's really good for their self-esteem. That defeats circle one, right? It's never the same twice in a row. So here's some helpful things that you guys can do. That accepting thing is more about when the other kids are making fun, because the other kids will make fun at the beginning. And if you as faculty don't set the rule and sort of make a general announcement about respect for everybody, it can get pretty nasty. Of course, we're not that far away from middle school. You can try to avoid sarcasm, irony, and double entendres, as Evan said, because a lot of the kids learn best when they see things and hear things, or one way or the other. A question I often ask is, do you learn better when you see something or hear something? So if it's a see something and it's a PowerPoint, if you can provide notes, that's one thing. If they can do it while they're hearing it, that's another thing. 3 strikes and you're out is for the kids who won't stop asking questions. You know, that's a very simple concept for them to understand. They get 3 questions. After 3 questions, they should write down their questions. And then they should visit you during office hours. Nobody should be allowed to hijack a class. It's not just theirs. But in their lack of theory of mind, remember, they don't get what other people are thinking. They will miss that. They'll think that their questions need to be answered. And probably in high school, where they were probably the smartest ones in the class, and most of their self-esteem came from their academic successes, they think that their questions should be answered immediately. But that's that theory of mind, that's executive functioning. I've got a couple of stories to tell after this, and you'll see how it works.
For you, about that one, because a lot of the individuals that we work with are very rule-minded and they are very concrete thinkers. More often than not, if you set a rule for them, they will follow that rule. And that's been my experience, at least. Some of them, again, might not, because
you might have to be concrete and consistent and repeat that rule to them a couple of times.
Right, but that's often a pretty good strategy.
3 questions, then write them down, email them to me, come to my office hours, no problem. Limit your questions and thoughts, because here, I know my natural tendency is that if I ask somebody a question and they don't answer in what I think the answer time should come back as, I'll ask a follow-up question, right? But if the student has a processing problem, he's still working on the first question. If we ask a follow-up question, it's only going to confuse the issue, and now everything else slows down, and then we get what I call gridlock. Absolute blank screen. So ask the question, wait longer than you think that you should, and the last one is we never take it personally. It's a wiring thing. It's not oppositional defiance. It's not being a wise guy. It's not trying to give you a hard time. It's this brain wiring thing. It's not understanding social cues. It's not understanding how other people think, and extreme anxiety. That combination is really, really difficult to deal with. So here's a couple of kids that I work with. The freshman, he got 800 on his math SATs. He got a complete full ride to Adelphi. He was chased by the physics department. He is, in fact, a pattern thinker. He is a concrete thinker who needs a logical explanation for everything, and he's the king of loophole thinking. He will find the fault in anything. We put a sign up in the office the other day about it being a peanut-free environment, and he questioned whether there should have been a comma there or not, and he would not give up on it. He has very poor executive functioning skills. We call them EFDs, executive functioning dysfunction. He has little to no impulse control, little to no frustration control, and poor affect regulation. This is something that some of the kids do have. It's like an all or nothing response on an affect. They're either very, very happy or very, very sad. And when they get excited, they get very excited very quickly, and when they get upset, they get very upset very quickly. That has to do with their executive functioning as well. This particular guy does not read social cues at all. His impulsivity creates the problem in the class. He's bombarding the teacher with questions, bombarding him. He's got dysgraphia. He's the guy who the physics teacher had to get that program for. He has very poor transitioning skills, So if class is canceled, or you move the room, or you cancel because you're sick, or you had an exam and you changed the date, not good. Not good at all. But he's a genius on video games. So here's how we dealt with him after we were getting problems from, we hear faculty tells DSS, faculty tells deans, provosts, word gets out. So he did dorm. He could not, because he has no executive functioning skills, he was missing classes in the morning, routinely. He was staying up all night, routinely. He was not medicating properly. He was not dressing or showering correctly. Now he lives at home, and his parents drive him in every single day and pick him up. He's also on a Social Security program called self-determination. I don't know if any of you guys know what that is. So the parents get a certain stipend every month to provide support service for their child. The state doesn't manage it. They just give you this amount of money. So they're using that, and the school has given him a waiver to have a mentor in every class. So the mentor's job is to go like this. Shut up. Shut up. So now he gets three Post-its at the beginning of every class, and each question, post it up, post it up, post it up. And then either he writes down his questions, or the mentor has the right to ask him to leave the class, and he must leave. Because if the mentor asks him to leave and he doesn't, then the faculty member will do it. And this is all, we're all working together on this. If faculty members ask students to leave class once, it's okay. If they ask students to leave the class twice, the faculty member now has the right to say, you can't come back. That's his concrete line. So that's the way we work with him on that. This I put in there last night because we were talking about it, because he's still being a problem. Internal thoughts versus external thoughts. This is sometimes we talk about inside voice and outside voice. You ever hear that? We teach the kids inside voice, outside. Well, he thinks that anything inside his head should be expressed to everybody. That's a theory of mind thing, and it's also not understanding thing. So we came up yesterday with everything that's in your head doesn't have to come out. And he was astonished. He's like, well, doesn't everybody say everything? We're like, no, everybody doesn't say everything. In fact, people have internal monologues. It goes on all day long. Keep it to yourself. Not everybody needs to know everything. And he's going to the student counseling center. Kids with Asperger's are thought not to be good candidates for insight therapy. And most schools do insight therapy, and particularly Adelphi, which is left in the old ages. They're still very Freudian out there. So it's unlikely that students will have an aha moment, but he has made a good alliance with a therapist out there, and I think it's helpful. So, but this is, you know, everything I do is trial and error. I try something. If it works, I stick with it. If it don't work, I try something else.
And different things are going to always work for different students. So even though you might have a student with exactly the same kind of profile, the same strategies are not necessarily going to be what's going to be effective for him or her.
Exactly. Okay. Here's another guy. He's a male freshman, what I call severe frontal lobe disabilities. He's got no executive functioning skill. I bet you if we did a CAT scan of his brain, there would be no frontal lobe. So all those things I talked about, frontal lobe skills, he can't do them. He can't keep track of assignments. He can't keep track of his readings. He comes late to everything, including class. He can't do it. Poor memory, poor processing. His parents didn't even get the books for whatever reason for the first 2 weeks of the semester. What kind of setback is that? However, he's extremely social, and he's learned to accommodate by being social. He's extremely charismatic. He doesn't have the social piece. He's fixated on railroads. You may know that sometimes people with Asperger's become fixated on, you know, small areas of interest. That's so that at least there's something that they get. He was advised to withdraw from 2 classes because, in my world, W's are better than F's. W's are neutral events, F's stay with you for a lifetime. So he went from 4 to 2. Another guy who lived on campus, now he doesn't. His parents are driving him back and forth. And somebody in the program who works with him in my program creates actually an Excel spreadsheet for him. Every day, every hour is supposed to be planned out. And all he has to do is follow the schedule. And he gets a hard copy of it, and he gets an emailed copy of it. It's better. What works best with him, honest, he's in the office Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday. If by Thursday, his work for the week, he cannot prove to us that he's done it, I have consent to call his parents. I will call your mother. He does not want that. So Thursday, Monday, Tuesday, and Wednesday, nothing happens. And then magically, Thursday it gets done. Here's another student. I have how much time?
I would say, yeah,
Okay, just give me this one because it's a different one, then we'll do questions. All right, so female student, she's an honors student. She came in as a poli-sci major. Now she's an artist. She always was an artist. She struggled with accepting other people's opinions, that whole theory of mind thing in poli-sci, and she would be doodling all the time. Well, now she's an artist. She is a creative thinker and a writer. She struggles with anxiety and depression. And at the bottom, we've identified these are the things that we need to watch. We need to talk about accepting other people's opinions, negative thinking, procrastination, and whether she's taking her medication. And with this young lady, that is the most significant issue. Is she taking her meds? Because if she's not taking the meds, none of this other stuff is going to matter. She carries around a sketchbook with her all the time now, and she is getting counseling, and she can't skip meals. That's another thing. She's got to eat her meals. So I could end now, and you guys could ask questions and then go teach your classes.
Yeah. What would you recommend? I've talked to Ben about this previously, about students who are just physically disruptive, not like they're constantly asking questions, but like I had a male student last semester who physically disrupted my class and would not take orders to like sit down or, I mean, yeah, you can't touch them.
No, I call public, me? Yeah. I'd give them 3 warnings and then call public safety. I'll call Ben. I mean,
okay.
The hell? You can't do that. That's not okay. People don't like it when you do that.
Yeah.
The other students don't like it when you do that. Are you aware of that? And then if that doesn't work, I just call public safety. This is.
Mitch, I have a question.
Yeah.
You alluded to the mentor and the parents receive Social Security stipend. And some of these students that you're describing may have the same issues. Just reduced one from 4 to 2 and all, and
yeah.
Considering having an aide in the classroom for personal reasons to give them a shove.
Right.
The biggest question is, how do people get that type of assistance?
Well, they get it. It came at Adelphi through DSS. They wrote it up as an academic accommodation.
Okay, so who paid for it?
SSI is paying the parents are paying the mentors. It's a private deal. I sent an email out to the university for them, looking for mentors, but they interviewed them, they hired them, they pay them, they are in charge of the schedule, but I meet with the mentors once a month.
Okay.
Just so we're all on the same page.
Keep in mind that it's the parents' obligation to provide anything of a personal nature.
But it's the school has the right not to approve that.
No, I think it's approved for these types of situations.
But the other thing too is if we want to connect people to some of those services, like and help, like if you see somebody that needs services or somebody needs help in some way, that's part of what we try and do. That's what Ben can do, and we can sort of get them connected with OPWDD, which is Office of People with Developmental Disabilities, or SSI, or Access VR, which is for vocational services. So we can try and funnel them in that direction so it's complementary to what they're doing in school.
Before you guys ask, I'm getting a number of questions of when you put somebody in this classroom to help contain somebody. And these are behavioral issues, and this is of personal nature. So anyway, if you do, we can talk about it, we can funnel them. I spoke to Lindsay just this morning to try to reach out to Evan to try to find somebody in aid. All right, but it's for personal reasons. Yeah, anyway, you have questions?
Any other questions?
A lot of the techniques you're talking about, like the young man, I think student 2, where you provide the schedule work for him every day, are these techniques really transitional? Or are we like hoping that once they graduate, they can do these other
I'm
things?
absolutely hoping that the stuff that I give as freshmen isn't needed as a senior, but I'm very optimistic. We're trying to move kids more from academic support towards vocational transition as they go through the program. But that could continue to go.
You mentioned medications, and I'm sure it's different for each case, but what kind of
Anti-anxiety stuff. Anti-anxiety, something to help with their OCD, something to help with depression, something to help with focus is a big issue. Technically in the DSM you can't have ADHD and Asperger syndrome at the same time. They can't be co-diagnosed. But so many kids come to me with both of those diagnoses. So focus can often be an issue. Maintaining focus. transition if something changes, coming back. So a lot of the kids take medication for those things.
Why is it, it seems like in the last few years there's been sort of a big kind of a blooming of the diagnosis.
Well, we're getting better at diagnosing it. You know, it wasn't, Asperger's was not a diagnosis until 1994, even though Hans Asperger came up with it in the 40s. It doesn't become an official diagnosis until 1994, and it doesn't really get out into the culture, into the doctors, until around 2000. So anybody who's born before that really went undiagnosed, and there's lots of adults now coming forward, and there's probably plenty of faculty who may or may not. It is 1 in 88, yeah? So it just wasn't a diagnosis. These were just the weird kids. You know, now we have a label for it. And now that we have a label for it and it's sort of culturally being accepted, they're going to take it away. DSM-5, which is the, you know, the Encyclopedia of Psychiatric Diagnoses, is coming out next year, and Asperger's is not going to be in there anymore after we got everybody to positively identify with it. But I'm pretty sure it'll stay. But that's why. It's just, and we have much better screening tools. We're picking kids off at 18 months now. 18 months. Somebody who was born in 1999, we didn't get to him until he was 15. So that's what.
And I think what we'll see is because we're doing a lot of early intervention stuff at 18 months, we'll see less prevalence of some of the issues that we're seeing now, hopefully, but they'll still be there. But because they get supports at an early age, that greatly improves their outcomes later in life.
Completely. Any other questions? So anybody who graduates from Queensborough with an associate's degree, I think, is automatically accepted at Adelphi. They don't have to go through the normal application process. If you have an associate's degree, it's an automatic acceptance. So if you know any students or counsel any students, Adelphi we have an amazing program. I'm telling you, it's an amazing program. We do academic, social, and vocational work. The kids get a ton of support service. Our GPA last semester was 3.3. For the last 4 years, it's been above 3.3 to 3.4. We're graduating kids. I'm building a whole post-graduation vocational program where they're getting opportunities to get jobs. Because the existential fear of the parents is what's going to happen in the future. My existential fear is that I'm going to get them through school. And then what? They're going to go back to live in the basement again. That's not, we could have saved a lot of time and money here. So I'm working with JCCA, with Access, that you may remember is vested, with lots of outside organizations about getting the kids job opportunities, job training. We're doing vocational testing like that. We do lots of social stuff. The office is open from 8 in the morning to 8 at night, Monday to Friday, and half a day on Saturday, so the kids are always in there. And it's a really safe place for them. So if you know anybody who you think is, could be a 4-year college student, send them on in. I have some brochures here if anybody wants them.
So thank you all so much for your attendance. Obviously, thank you to Evan and to Ben and to Mavis for their comments today, and we hopefully will see you again. We have these other events in the future, so thank you.